Hey guys, today we're going to talk about lesson 12-2 and we're going to talk about histograms. I've kind of mentioned them before. Let's see if I can get the date right today. 5/30/30. No, I'm just joking. 19. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking yesterday with the date, but thank you for humoring me in my old age. All right, so let's talk about what is a histogram. So it sounds like history, right? And a gram is like a note, so it's a note about history? I'm not exactly sure, but basically what it is kind of a bar graph. So it's a type of bar graph. Used to display numerical data. So that means numbers, right? And what makes that significant, numerical data, is that a bar graph usually is displaying data about words, right? Now, not only is it doing numerical data, it's data that has been, or that have been organized into equal intervals. Equal intervals. Now you might say, okay, Rosner, I'm hearing all these words, but my brain's going, what? Yeah, I know, we'll get there. So numerical data and equal intervals, and we'll talk about what all of that means in just a minute. Okay. And just like a bar graph, the height of the bar of each bar represents how many times values appeared in that interval. And we take this to mean frequency. How frequent. Okay, frequency. All right. Now, what's really strange is that we actually don't know how many of each kind of number in that interval is being represented. It's just like any of these 5 numbers, we're going to count up how many times those 5 numbers show up, and that makes the bar's height, okay? Now, bars touch, which is weird because bar graphs, they don't touch. Bars touch because, oops, sorry, I forgot the word touch. I said it multiple times, but never wrote it. Bars touch because where one interval ends, the next begins. So there's no gaps in this, okay? Well, there could be a gap, and I'll explain that in a minute. Where we didn't have any data, you can have an empty spot, but that just means no numbers in that interval were part of the data, okay? So I'm going to bring up some graph paper. Give me just a second for that. And I'm going to draw a couple of graphs just to compare. So we're going to do a bar graph on one side. And it talks about frequency, so how many times was something chosen. Oh, that's kind of a weird Y. Frequency. And then, let's say we had, give it a little room here. And we had red, and we had blue, and green, and orange. And so I'm alternating high and low just so that the words don't all run in together. We have an overall title for that graph, colors, and then this whole graph is about favorite colors. And we're going going to count 2, 4, 6, 8. We'll just put the tick marks in between. Okay, and then we would have, and this was always kind of fun, is we got to color our bars the same as whatever it was we were studying. So let's go up to here, and that's our red, went up to 3, and our blue is going to go up to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then our green, sad little green, he's only at 1. And last was the orange, and orange went up to kind of pathetic 2. Okay, so that's a bar graph. So let's look at the histogram. So make it a little bit bigger. And this one is going to be wins for basketball teams. Oops, that should be a capital. It's a title. Okay. And so we're going to have the teams or frequency. So how many teams? Or you could have frequency just like on the bar graph. And let's see, we want to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And we'll just mark in those odd numbers. And then we're going to do, let's see, and then we'll go, oops, I was trying to figure out, oh, that doesn't look right. Let's go 3. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 intervals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 intervals. And this is going to represent from 11 to 20. This one is 21 to 30. So if you count up, there's an interval of 10. Let's see, 31 to 40. 41 to 50. And 51 to 60. So notice that each win, where one bar ends, the next bar begins, and these would be wins. So let's say there were 2 wins. Let's see, how do I want to do this? And then for 21 to 30, we went up to 4 wins. And from 31 to 40, we also had 4 wins. And 41 to 50, we went all the way up to 10 wins. And from 51 to 60, we went to 8 wins. Okay, so notice the bars are touching each other. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next screen, and we're going to talk about how do you actually make a bar or a histogram, and then we'll practice. So to make a histogram, now I'm definitely going to be taking 2 pages on my notes. This is still, for me, was on my first page, and then the example will be on the next one. So kind of some basics. What we do is we look for minimum and maximum values. So we're trying to figure out where do we begin and where do we end. And this is going to help us to determine the intervals. What are we going to count by? Are we going to count by 5s, 10s, 15s? Okay. And Then we're going to create something called a frequency table, because usually these have a lot of data in them. So what this allows me to do is very quickly, once I figure out my intervals, is figure out how many numbers are in each of the intervals. So create a frequency table, not tables, to see how many values fit into each interval. Okay, and then we're going to create a first quadrant graph, so everything is positive. Okay, now I'm going to give you some ideas of what you need to have with your graph. You're going to have a title of the overall graph. You don't need to put a box, we're just doing that for information. You're going to have a title for the bottom of the graph. You're going to see tick marks. And what you're going to also see here are equal intervals. Then you're going to see tick marks on the y-axis, evenly spread out. You're going to count by whatever intervals you decided to do, or the frequency numbers are going to tell you what to do. So this can either be called frequency on the side, or you might say something like number of people, number of wins, number of shirts, whatever, okay? And then we're going to draw bars. That'll be our fourth step. For each interval. At a height that matches its frequency. Okay, and again, I'm going to kind of yell at you. Bars touch. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my next page and I'm going to go off screen and I'm going to put in my data because we got a lot of data to put in there. All right, so see you in just a sec. Okay, so you can see that I have a table of values. In fact, I have a lot of values. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 7, 28 values. So what I'd like you to do is to freeze frame this, copy it down, and then join me back when you're ready, okay? Now, remember what we talked about. We want to know the minimum and maximum value. So I'm scanning through and I see 70s, 90s, 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 80s, 90s, 70s, 80s, 60s. So I see 65 and 68. So the minimum is 65. Now let's look. I know I go to the 90s. So I see a 97, 98. See, I'm looking for, do we have a 99? Nope, 98. So the maximum is 98. So what I want to do is figure out how to break these down. So it seems to me, I really want usually about 4 or 5 intervals seems to work. So I'm going to go over here onto the right, and I'm going to take this data, test scores, and now I'm going to create a frequency table. So a frequency table has 3 columns. Column 1 are the scores. Now that's where we're going to write our intervals. Column 2 is the tally marks as we go through our list. Actually, I'm going to make that bigger because frequencies just add up. And then we have frequency here. Okay. So So I know this is a funky looking graph so far, right? So I kind of build it as I make it. Though that kind of makes no sense. Oh well, you know what I'm saying. Or if you don't, just go along with me. So I'm going to go count by tens, and I'm going to start with 60 and go to 69. And then I'm going to go 70 to 79, so all the 70s. Can you hear my dumb dog? We've got 80 to 89, and we have 90 to 99. Okay, so this is how the tally marks work. As I just read the numbers from the list and I make tally marks. 72, 97, 80, 86, 92, 98, 88. So that's the first row. Then 76, 79, 82, 91, 83, remember bundles of 5, 90, bundle of 5, 70, now third row, 81, 94, 96, 92, 72, bundle of 5, 83, 85, 65, 91, 92, 68, 86, 89, and 97. So then I take those tick marks, tally marks, and I add them up. So 2 for the 60s, 5 for the 70s. I had 10 for the 80s and 11 for the 90s. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and make my histogram. So we're going to call this test scores, just like our table was called, test scores. We're going to say number of students. So how many students were in these intervals. You might say number of scores. You could say that too. The scores are going to be here. And then we're going to break into our groups. Now I'm going to show you a slightly different way to make the bars. And we're going to make them evenly spread out. And this one is not going to be surrounded by the tick mark. It's going to be up to the tick mark. So 60 to 69, 70 to 79, 80 to 89, 90 to 99. Now let's see, we need to get all the way up to 11. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Now this would be a lot easier if I brought back up that grid work, but we're going to just brave it, okay? We're just going to do it ourselves. All right, so in the 60s went up to a mark of 2. So it goes right to the tick mark. And then 70s go up to 5. Now if you're using graph paper and everything's spread out evenly, the width of the bars should be the same. So the 80s go up to 10. And then the 90s go up to 11. So notice that I don't know from my histogram what are the actual numbers in each of the bars. I just know that in that interval, let's say 90 to 99, there were 11 numbers. So what we can do is start drawing some conclusions. So we could say most students scored above 80%. Okay, of the 27, 20 or 28, 21 of them were in the 80s or above. We would say the fewest number of students scored between 60 60 to 69. We could say percent. Okay. We could say the number of students increased as the scores increased. Okay, and what allows me to say that is my scores just went up like that. Okay, and we had more and more kids at each of those levels. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We could say, no one scored 100. Which is not true when we take our tests. I always have somebody scores 100. Interestingly enough, no one scored below 60%. Okay. And we could say, really, there's no outliers. Outliers would be there's somebody just kind of hanging out by himself and there's a gap in the bars. Okay? So those are some of the conclusions you can draw looking at a histogram. All right, good luck with this, guys. We'll talk about it in class tomorrow.